Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, I needed a little more time than a day to digest a very heartbreaking and frustrating Game 5 loss for my beloved Celtics. They fall to the Golden State Warriors 104-94. See, I gave the score in the correct order this time, Sap, after you pointed out that I was always trying to make it seem like the Celtics won games with the way I was giving the score. But they lose by 10. It was not that close. Golden State came out pretty dominant, and the Celtics did not respond. Really, the Celtics only had one quarter where they looked competent, and that was the third quarter, strangely enough, which has been owned by Golden State in this series. But in Game 5, it was the Celtics who played a fantastic third quarter. But after that, they had no answers in the fourth. And they now are down 3-2, facing elimination and the championship slipping out of their fingers. Sap, same sort of stuff we've been talking about all postseason long, and especially in the series with the Celtics that haunted them. I'll let you talk about the specifics to start. But, here I am today with the Celtics, now have to stave off elimination twice, and I feel very frustrated about the whole thing, and opportunities have just been squandered left and right by this team.
I sound like a broken record at this point, but it's been this way throughout the entire postseason. It's about turnovers, and more turnovers. In the postseason, when the Celtics turn the ball over 15 or fewer times, they're 14-2. When they turn it over 16 or more times, they're 0-7. In Game 5, they had 18 turnovers, thus they lost. They also went 21 of 31 from the free throw line. That's 10 misses. That's 67%. And in the fourth quarter alone, Jason Tatum had 4 air balls, not from the free throw line. That would have really been breaking news. But from the floor, he had 4 air balls in the fourth quarter alone. Jet, the Celtics and Jason Tatum have morphed into Russell Westbrook with the turnovers and the poor shooting and poor free throw shooting and inefficient offense. It's been very, very frustrating. And just to think back to Game 4, with 5 minutes and 18 seconds left in Game 4, the Celtics are up 2-1. They've got a 4-point lead at TD Garden. They look to be in control of that series, right? Even though Steph Curry had a monumental game, the Celtics were in really good shape to win Game 4 and go up 3-1. Well, over the final 5 minutes and 18 seconds, you get outscored 17-3. Now the series is tied. And then in Game 5, even though they stunk for the first half, they were able to create a 5-point lead midway through the third quarter. And heck, with 3:55 left in the third quarter, they're up 4. Well, from that point forward to the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, again, a 7-minute stretch, they're outscored 21-6. They've had 2 awful meltdown stretches in this series. Again, the final 5:18 in Game 4, where they're outscored 17-3, and a 7-minute stretch, the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter in Game 5, where they're outscored 21-6. And that's the difference right now. In Golden State's in control of the series. And I don't feel really confident about this, but I would feel confident if the Celtics can find a way to win Game 6, end up in Game 7 in Golden State, where, again, Golden State has lost a Game 7 in the past. Now, it was, 6 years ago to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, but Game 7s can be a toss-up because all you need is an off-night shooting from Steph Curry, foul trouble from Klay Thompson, whatever the case, maybe you will have a chance. But they got to get through Game 6 before they get to Game 7, obviously.
Yeah, and you had that off night from Steph Curry in Game 5, and that's part of why it's even more why it's frustrating, Sap. 7 of 22 from the floor, 0 of 9 from 3. I think it broke a streak of 230 some odd games consecutive that Steph Curry had hit a 3, which was obviously an NBA record. And yet you lost that game. I mean, how is that possible? Well, Andrew Wiggins outplayed your 2 stars, 26 rebounds, which he had a career high already at halftime in points, in playoff career high, I should say. And he had 13 rebounds. So you let Andrew Wiggins outplay Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. You can't have that. And then you have guys off the bench. Jordan Poole, 14 points. We all know about this, his second buzzer beater, heave. Gary Payton, the second, 15 points off the bench. Meanwhile, the Celtics bench got virtually nothing. 3 points out of Grant Williams, 1 point out of Derek White, no points out of Peyton Pritchard. None of the Celtics role players didn't step up. Obviously 18 turnovers, as you alluded to, Sap. That's horrible. The free throws are horrible. They seem overwhelmed by the moment, Sap. And it's frustrating because it's a team that's now won 2 game sevens on the road here, on the road to this finals. One of those was on the road in Miami, and one was against the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. So you're like, how could they be afraid of the moment? But every time that the pressure is really on them and the stage seems to be the brightest, they seem to wilt and they seem to not know what they're doing. And that's really frustrating. And I think the free throw shooting is part of that. Is I think it's nerves and they're clanking free throws, and then that sort of snowballs on you. Once they start missing, they compound that by missing more because they're really thinking about it. At the end of games, they don't seem to know who they want the ball to go to, what they want to do. They take a lot of threes at the end of games for God knows what reason, and their arms are heavy and they're clanking those left and right. So, I do think that they seem like the moment's too big for them right now. And obviously they're still capable of winning. It wouldn't be a Herculean task to win 2 games in a row here against a team that you and I both think they're more talented than. But Golden State seems a lot more composed because they have been here many times before. The Celtics haven't been here at all. And, if I'm looking at what the Celtics lack and what Golden State has, it's that sort of veteran leadership that's been able to calm the team down, like in that third quarter, Sap, when things got out of control, to be able to rally the team around and come back from and not completely panic and melt like the Celtics have. And you saw that happen earlier in the series too, like you said in the prior game. So I think that the Celtics' problems are not from a skill standpoint; it's an emotional standpoint.
Well, I also think that if you look at this, that Golden State's better than Milwaukee and Miami. They're pretty equal to them defensively. They do it a little bit differently. They don't have the rim protector like Giannis or Brook Lopez like Milwaukee has. They may not have as much physical toughness as Miami, but they're still a really good defensive team. And the difference is they make you pay for your turnovers, which Miami and Milwaukee didn't make you pay as much. This stat comes from JJ Redick, who I really enjoy listening to because he gets into the nitty gritty, the numbers, the analytics, and they're so interesting. The Warriors have forced 45 live ball turnovers in this series, resulting in 66 points. The Celtics have forced only 27 live ball turnovers, resulting in 42 points. The difference in this series is 24 points. Those are the 24 points off of live ball turnovers. And again, there's different types of turnovers. Dead ball turnover, Jason Tatum sends a pass into the 7th row. Okay, you can kind of recover from that because by the time they retrieve the ball, you go back on defense, you set up, and now you've got equal footing there. Jason Tatum throws a pass to Steph Curry. Next thing you know, within 3 seconds, Golden State's at the other end of the court, and Steph's setting up for an open 3, or Klay Thompson's stepping up for an open 3, or Andrew Wiggins is dunking at the rim, and now, it's points for Golden State. So that's been a huge difference. Again, the Warriors have forced 45 live ball turnovers, resulting in 66 points. The Celtics have forced only 27 live ball turnovers, resulting in 42 points. That's a huge difference. And also the inconsistency of the Celtics in this series, Jet. In their 2 wins, they scored 120 and 116 points. That's awesome, right? You're going to win scoring that type of with that type of arsenal. In their 3 losses, it's been 88, 97, 94. Like very poor offensive performances. Thus, you lose. Look at Golden State's offense in this series in 5 games: 108, 107, 100, 107, 104. Just consistent. They're more consistent. And the more I watch this series, Jet, I get the feeling that the Warriors are kind of like the Patriots in 2018. They may not be the best team, but they have so much championship DNA that they're going to find a way to beat the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Rams, who might be more talented, but just not ready for the shining moment. I hope I'm wrong on that, and the Celtics come back and win Game 6 and force this to Game 7. But you just see that consistency with Golden State, like you alluded. When things go off the rails for Golden State, they kind of right the ship just enough to get back on track and then win the game. Where the Celtics, when it goes bad, it goes really bad.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good comparison, Steph, to the Patriots in another regard too, in that what we talked about with the Patriots dynasty for years is that you can't make mistakes against them. They're not going to let you just get away with, oh, we're going to go for it in 4th down in our own territory here. And if we don't get it, then the Patriots are going to score, period. or if you kick field goals instead of trying, really push the pace and go and, get a touchdown, you're going to lose. So I think the Celtics have made a ton of mistakes, obviously, and the Warriors are a team that makes you pay for it, period. And a lot of that too is the maturity of being able to know what the moment is and say, we've been here a million times before. This isn't new territory for us. So they feel comfortable. And the Celtics obviously have it, Sap. And you look at the turnovers, you look at the first play of the game, Sap. Celtics, Jason Tatum turned the ball over, unforced error. It's the unforced ones that kill you, Sap. The ones where they just look lazy. And the Celtics, in a game that was just so important, where you're like, they really need to win this game, or at least be, come out with, I thought they were going to come out and be super competitive. I thought the way the game was going to go is the Celtics get off to a big lead and Golden State chips away. Instead, the Celtics came out, as flat and as lazy and tired as you could possibly be. 16 points in the first quarter, Sap. With all those guys, weapons on offense, how do you amount to 16 points in a quarter? That's terrible. And Jason Tatum's final stat line, Sap, looks pretty good. 10 of 20 from the floor, 5 of 9 from 3, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 27 points. But when it mattered the most, he didn't do anything in the fourth quarter. And that's incredibly frustrating. And Jaylen Brown had a bad game. 5 of 18 from the floor, not efficient at all. Al Horford, since game one, has really been kind of a ghost offensively. Grant Williams has given you nothing. Peyton Pritchard's given you nothing. Derek White has been pretty good, but last game he gave you nothing. So other guys aren't stepping up. We know what the case is with Rob Williams. He's playing at 30, 40%. He's still been effective, but in spurts, you can't ask him to do that much. In fact, he played 30 minutes. It's probably more than he's capable of playing, considering his injuries. And so it's, at the end of the day, Sap, it's on Tatum and Brown to be able to step up and play superb superstar basketball. And they have not done that consistently. They haven't really done that at all. And so the Celtics are finding themselves in a 3-2 hole, and with the possibility of the Warriors tomorrow night celebrating in Boston, because the Celtics have had opportunities and they have not been able to seize them. This was the third game, Sap, in this series that the Celtics had a chance to take a really commanding lead in this series and put their foot on the throat of the Golden State Warriors. Game 2, they had the opportunity. They blew that one. Game 4, they had the opportunity to go up 3-1. They blew that one. Game 5, they had the opportunity to win and potentially try to close things out on their home court, and they blew that one. 3 massive games, 3 losses. And I think the Celtics, their body language was bad towards the end of last game. They just look like they're like, we should be winning this series. Why aren't we winning? We're better than this team. They look sort of lost.
You can kind of look at this series, and either team could say we could have swept the opposition, right? Because other than game 3, the other 4 games were back and forth in a sense of each team had an opportunity to win and they just couldn't seal the deal. So here we are. And this goes back to my initial point before the series. These are both very good teams, not great teams. You're not going to get, a sweep, certainly. And now we're going to game 6, and maybe we go to game 7. And you look at Jason Tatum, he's going to catch a lot of heat for the way he's performed in this series, and deservedly so. He hasn't stepped up the way you would like him to step up. His stat line was good the other night, but there was a stretch when he reached 22 points and he was stuck on 22. If he'd been playing blackjack, he would have lost by, one point on the hand, but he was stuck on 22, which felt like 45 minutes in real time, right? It got off to a great start in the third quarter. You take the lead, and then he just disappeared till it was garbage time. Here's the thing about Jason Tatum. In the series so far, he's 5 of 21 in the fourth quarter. That's 24%. That's abysmal. The other thing is, in the final 5 minutes of the 5 fourth quarters in this series, Luke Cornett has 5 points. Luke Cornett, 5 points in the final 5 minutes of the 5 games in this series so far. Jason Tatum has 3. So Luke Cornett's been more productive in the final 5 minutes of each of these games than Jason Tatum. I'm not making that up. It's not a joke. It's not something out of the onion. It's the facts, and that's not good for the Boston Celtics. Tatum has to be better during winning time than he has been so far in this series.
Yeah, that's horrible. And the crazy thing about it too, Sep, is that It's not like he's a bad fourth quarter player. He's been a very good fourth quarter player and had in other postseason series and throughout his career, he's been a good fourth quarter player. And I don't know if, the shoulder is bothering him, which, he shot efficiently from the floor. He didn't shoot well from the free throw line. But so you're like, well, is the shoulder actually bothering him or is he fatigued? Well, what the hell is going on? There's a lot of questions. I think it's fair to criticize him for how he's played in this finals because it has not been good. It's not been the level that you expect out of Jason Tatum. And I know he's young and this is his first finals, but they are here. It's not fiction. They are in the NBA finals, and for a large reason, it's because of the play of Jason Tatum. And he has not lived up to his end of the bargain in this series at all. And Jaylen Brown's been up and down as he is, and the rest of the role players, that's what they're role players for a reason. So they're going to be up and down, but you need the consistency out of Jason Tatum, and you haven't gotten that at all. And you need more consistency out of Jaylen Brown too. And I know they're both young, and so it's a lot to ask, but you are at this point for a reason. And so I think that it's not unreasonable to ask for the consistency from your star players. So
not at all, because I look at this and say, okay, Tatum's in his 5th year, Jaylen Brown's in his 6th year. 7 of the 8 rotational players are 28 and younger. That's all well and good. And Celtic fans will say, well, if they lose this, they'll be back next year. Well,
yeah,
not necessarily. It's just not the right narrative. It does, because let's go back a decade ago when Oklahoma City lost to LeBron and the Heat in 5 games in the 2012 NBA Finals. If you were in Oklahoma City, you would say, well, we've got Kevin Durant. He's the best scorer in the game. We got Russell Westbrook, who's, on the precipice of averaging a triple-double. Oh, and we've got James Harden, although we're going to trade him in the offseason because we can't afford him. But we still got Durant and Westbrook. We'll get back to the finals, right? No, they never got back to the finals. Or if you want to have a cross-board reference, Dan Marino wins an MVP in his 2nd year in the league, sets records, gets to the Super Bowl, and never goes back again. My favorite football player of all time, Aaron Rodgers, 3rd year as a starter, wins the goddamn Super Bowl. Since then, he's won 4 league MVPs and has never gotten back to the Super Bowl. So you can't just look at that and say, well, they'll be back there next year because they're young. They'll figure it all out. You've got teams in the East that are only going to get better last year. Chris Middleton should be healthy in the postseason next year. Milwaukee will be a factor. We know that Brooklyn at some point might figure it out. Philadelphia might figure it out. That Miami will add another piece and contend at some point. So you've got to take advantage of that situation right now. It's there for you. And I just don't know if these guys are quite ready yet. And they're facing a team that's not going to shoot itself in the foot. You talked about that when the teams played the Patriots. They'd walk off the field going, damn, we're better than them, but how did we lose? Well, you didn't play as good a situational football as the Patriots. And that's kind of the case here in this series, situational basketball. Look, Jordan Poole, who, had a nice game the other night. He had 14 points. Gary Payton II had 15 points. Those guys scored 29 points in 40 minutes. Your top 2 reserves, Derek White and Williams, had 4 points in 37 minutes? That's an enormous difference. And Jordan Poole's hit 2 long-distance threes at the buzzer of the 3rd quarter in 2 games. Now, maybe that's luck, but that's also situational basketball. When he banked in that 3 at the end of the 3rd quarter in Game 5, you kind of got a sense that, oh, that was a backbreaker. And you know what? The Celtics screwed that up. You can't leave people wide open, NBA shooters who are, the best in the world at this, even if it's a lucky shot. Grant Williams at that point was kind of just walking around the court, not knowing what to do. His head's up his ass. And here's Jordan Poole. I know it's a lucky shot, but don't even give him the opportunity to take that shot. Kind of contest it somewhat. Don't foul him. That's the
absolutely.
Dumbest thing you can do.
Part of that too, Sep, is they're so frustrated with the officiating, which has been bad. The officiating's been bad. No one's going to argue that.
But
it's not been great for either side. I'm not saying it.
No, but
it hasn't.
Okay, I know people are saying this. The Celtics, the Golden State got called for 12 more fouls than the Celtics.
No, I'm not saying it's been skewed one way or the other. I'm just saying it's been bad.
Everybody, it's been bad, but if it's been worse for the other team, why complain, right? I mean,
no, I agree with you, Sep. I'm just saying they're frustrated because they think the quality is poor, which they're not. The quality is poor, but you got to get Golden State's not bitching about. I mean, a little bit.
Let's hope. Is Grant Williams bitching because the call went against Golden State? I hope not. I hope he's not that deranged.
They complain way too much, and Udoka knows do. And he's trying to lobby for them because he doesn't want his guys to be frustrated. So he's picking up a tech, which I have no problem with him doing. And I think the guy who I think is blameless throughout this is Udoka. I think has still done a phenomenal job coaching. Like, I don't know what the hell more you can ask of the guy in terms of, I think he's done everything that to get the team to this point, and it's on the players right now. And whenever I listen to him wired up or his pre or post game interviews, he says all the right things. It's not the things that Brad Stevens was saying that were so vague. Like Udoka's pointing like here, here, and here. This is where we screwed up and didn't play well. I like that. I really like that. But the players are complaining about the officiating so much to the point where they're not playing defense. They're getting distracted, and Golden State's obviously going to take advantage of that, Sap. And also, I think there's like this is not the first year I've said this, and I think it's maintained this year. There's like an arrogance about this team for that has accomplished nothing. There was an arrogance about them for getting to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years in a row, and there's been an arrogance about this team, like about the Warriors. It's like, oh, Andrew Wiggins, like, yeah, okay, we're not going to guard. Yeah, whatever. Andrew Wiggins, we're not going to pay too much attention to you. You're not Steph Curry, and we're not too worried about it. Klay Thompson, he's not really what he was before. Draymond Green hasn't played well. We're just going to give him a wide open lane to the basket. It's like they think that because they are more talented than Golden State should sort of just like acquiesce and if the Celtics are going to give them open shots, miss the shots, and let the Celtics do whatever they want to. I mean, Andrew Wiggins played great. I'm not taking anything away from him, but the Celtics did not play competitive defense on Andrew Wiggins.
Well, Andrew Wiggins in the last 2 games has scored 43 points and had 29 rebounds. This is a guy who's a career, 6 rebound per game guy. I mean, his career high before game 4 of the finals, both regular season and playoffs, was 11. And he's come back and had 16 in game 4, 13 in game 5. He was clearly the best player on the floor in game 5. He's done a really good job defensively against Jason Tatum. He was the first pick in the draft. Again, maybe overdrafted when you look back at the 2014 draft. Embiid should have been the first pick, but he had back issues, so teams kind of had a red flag on him, so they went with Wiggins. Minnesota did. And look, it's kind of interesting that Wiggins could be the third guy that leaves Minnesota and wins a championship with another team, right? Garnett did it with the Celtics. Kevin Love did it with Cleveland, and maybe Andrew Wiggins is going to do it here with Golden State. So, leaving Minnesota is a good idea for players. Maybe Karl Anthony Towns is the next one.
Maybe, Sap, as an aside, there's a story, and I'm sure we'll talk about probably the offseason, that all these other teams, the owners and GMs, are pissed at the Warriors because the Warriors are, paying so much in luxury tax and going to continue to pay more because they're going to, re-sign all these guys. They're like, it's not fair, whatever. Well, if you don't have dumbass teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves trading them Andrew Wiggins and 2 high lottery picks for D'Angelo Russell, which at the time everybody besides the Timberwolves knew was an idiotic trade, then you don't have this problem. It's the same thing as like with the Patriots. Like, oh yeah, here's Randy Moss. We're just going to trade him to you. Like what? Why are you helping out these guys? And so that trade really, I knew at the time was going to work out for Golden State because there's a perfect situation for Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins is a better basketball player than D'Angelo Russell. I know D'Angelo Russell was the number 2 pick. He's made an all-star team. Now so has Andrew Wiggins. But Andrew Wiggins fits better into this. And then for their troubles, they gave him 2 lottery picks, Sap. It's like if you don't have these idiot teams like the Timberwolves, then the Warriors are, probably don't get to the finals with Andrew Wiggins. They don't have the ability to sign all these good guys because you're helping out the team that does not need help. So that's just a quick rant about me being frustrated with this stupid Minnesota Timberwolves.
I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, Joe Lacob and the Golden State Warriors, they create a lot of money. They built this beautiful new arena in San Francisco. Right now they're there with the Knicks and the Lakers and the Celtics as the 4 most valuable franchises in the NBA, and they spend money. Wouldn't you want to be a fan of the Golden State Warriors? If I'm a fan of the Golden State Warriors, I couldn't care less if Joe Lacob and the owners are paying, an exorbitant amount of money with the luxury tax. From what I understand, their payroll is $345 million because of the luxury tax. And it's nice to have a player like Andrew Wiggins, who is technically your 4th best player, although he's been your 2nd best player in this series behind only Steph Curry. But in the pecking order, obviously, Curry, Thompson, Draymond Green, and then Andrew Wiggins. And what makes Golden State scary? And I don't want to, we won't get into this too much right now because they still haven't won the championship yet. And there's a long offseason that we can talk about this. They have 3 young players, James Wiseman, Kuminga, and Moody,
Yep.
That's their future. That's kind of scary, right? They have these three young guys that look like they're all going to be really good players. So that Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Andrew Wiggins now will have even more coming out in the next couple of years, not to mention Jordan Poole. They draft and develop players well. It's not that they just went out. I know when they signed Durant, that was just not even fair, but they've kind of reinvented themselves now by getting an Andrew Wiggins, by drafting well and developing
Absolutely,
players.
Seth. And these dumbass teams that are complaining about it. Hey, you had an opportunity to draft Steph Curry, you idiots. And, they didn't. They had the opportunity to draft Klay Thompson. He wasn't a very high pick. Didn't. Draymond Green, second round pick. They didn't draft him. People mocked them when they drafted Jordan Poole. Gary Payton's been on 30 teams,
Right.
between the G League and Europe and China and the United States. None of you could figure out how to get this guy to be a valuable NBA player. He's playing 26 minutes in the finals and scoring 15 points. I'm sorry, but these teams should have nothing to complain about. The Durant thing, complain about that. That is valid. This stuff, they have a bunch of good players because they've drafted and developed well. Other teams have had the chance to draft, develop, or sign some of these guys, and they passed on it. So shame on you.
Jet, the Timberwolves had two chances to draft Steph Curry. Instead, they took Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn, both point guards, by the way. They wanted to draft a point guard, and they decided to go with Ricky Rubio, which I understand, because if Rubio had stayed healthy, he was an all-star caliber player. He's not Steph Curry. And then Johnny Flynn, who was, obviously not Steph Curry either. But they had two chances to draft Steph Curry.
The Warriors should give the Timberwolves rings, for all these championships they've won too, because between the Steph Curry passing on him twice. So give the Timberwolves, thank you, Minnesota Timberwolves. And now if they win with this one, the Andrew Wiggins trade, Sap, was just idiotic. Idiotic. I mean, I don't know how you can look at it any other way. It was so stupid. The Timberwolves were so desperate to get D'Angelo Russell because he was friends with Karl Anthony Towns that they, what should have been just a swap of Wiggins for Russell. I think everybody would have been like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. They're like, yeah, take a couple of lottery picks too. That'll really sweeten the pot. I'm sure Golden State was like, sure, yeah, why not?
Golden State can send the Timberwolves rings for Andrew Wiggins and Steph Curry, but the Celtics have to send rings to Minnesota for Kevin Garnett. So Minnesota is impacted, multiple finals here. And by the way, they also traded Kevin Love for Andrew Wiggins, and
right.
Kevin Love was, a pretty important part in the 2016 championship team in Cleveland. So Minnesota's turned into the farm team for all these championship teams.
Kingmakers.
Yeah. Maybe we should change their name to the Minnesota Kingmakers.
They should. Jeez. That's got to be frustrating as a Timberwolves fan. A team that's had virtually no success. They've made one conference finals in their NBA lives. That's the extent of it. And here that they're trading all their good players and helping other teams win championships. Maybe the Celtics rally, Sep, and we don't have to talk about the dumbass Andrew Wiggins trade anymore. But it has been frustrating, Sap. Like I said, three great opportunities in this series to really put your stamp on it and put pressure on the Warriors. You lost all three of those games. You've now lost consecutive games for the first time in the postseason, really the first time since January, other than the game they lost to the Raptors where they didn't play any of their starters. So I'm wondering about in Game 6 where the Celtics' heads are at after knowing that they've had these great opportunities and not played well in those games and squandered them, knowing that what was hurting you going into Game 5, turnovers, missed free throws, that sort of stuff, not playing well in the fourth quarter, at the end of fourth quarters, and not being able to reverse those trends, and then losing consecutive games for the first time in a while. Where do you think they are in terms of where their heads are at, Sap, heading into this Game 6?
Well, if we're looking at the past, and they lost a really heartbreaking game, Game 5 against Milwaukee, which gave the Bucks a 3-2 lead, and you were going to Milwaukee for Game 6, and most people felt that the season was going to end that night.
Yeah,
and Jason Tatum had 46 points. I didn't. I felt comfortable because I thought the Celtics were better than Milwaukee, and it turned out to be the case as they won Game 6, and then they won Game 7 in blowout fashion. And then they had a really difficult loss in Game 6 against Miami when they could have wrapped things up at TD Garden, got a little extra rest going into the finals. Instead, they didn't show up that night. They made a little bit of a comeback, ended up losing, and then you needed to go to Miami for Game 7, and you won there. So when they've screwed up, they've normally bounced back. My concern here, though, is they screwed up at the end of Game 4. So you would think in Game 5, they'd be ready to play and come out blazing. Instead, they scored 16 points in the first quarter of Game 5. So it felt like what happened at the end of Game 4 really lingered into Game 5. Now, hopefully for the Celtics, what happened in Game 5 doesn't linger into Game 6, or else Golden State's going to wrap this thing up. The difference between Milwaukee and Miami compared to Golden State is with Milwaukee, it was Giannis and maybe a little bit of Drew Holiday. With Miami, it was Jimmy Butler and Lord knows who. With Golden State, they just proved the other night Steph Curry can have an off night shooting and they still can break 100 points and beat you because other guys step up. Look, Klay Thompson looks closer to Klay Thompson the last 3 games, right? Yeah. Averaging 21 a game the last 3 games, hitting 40% of his threes. Draymond Green played a sneaky good game in Game 5. Not great, but 9 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. You know, what Draymond Green does. Poole and Payton both had really nice games. Andrew Wiggins was the best player on the floor with 26 and 13. They just have more ways to beat you, which kind of leads me back into this whole thing. And I kind of said this during the Miami series. Before this series, we were both in agreement that the Celtics were more talented. I don't know anymore if that's the case, right? I mean, what we'll do is after the series is over, maybe we'll do a draft like we did before the series. And, you know, Andrew Wiggins might not be the 7th guy drafted like he was before the series.
He might go number 1.
He might go number 1 or number 2. I mean, he's outplayed Jason Tatum in the series, especially in games 4 and 5.
Well, I think, Sap, it'd be worth it to do 2 exercises, a draft and then a power ranking of how they played in this finals. Because if you're power ranking the guys and how they played in the finals, and obviously there's still games left to be played, so that can change. Steph Curry, number 1. I don't think anybody would argue with that. Probably Andrew Wiggins, number 2, right? In terms of power rankings, the guys who, in terms of how good they've been in this finals. I think that's a reasonable way to do it. So we can look at it both ways. And, you know, I have the tendency, and I was texting you about this too, to be like, this is what the Celtics are missing. This is what they're lacking. This is what they need to do in the postseason. And I don't want to, you know, start getting into that yet until, you know, the Celtics actually kick the bucket here or win a championship. Hopefully it's the latter. But you know, I do think that there have become some roster issues, whether it's you know, specialists or more veterans that have kind of creeped up in this finals that the Celtics lack. You know, I think that you have one true, you know, veteran in Al Horford, Marcus Smart a little bit, but Marcus Smart hasn't really been here before. You know, Al Horford's had a long career. So the guys that bring out the bench, Sap, you know, Grant Williams, this is his 3rd year. Pritchard, this is his 2nd year. Derek White, you know, has only been on the Celtics for half a season. So I think that they've had a little bit of roster problems that have creeped up in the finals, but maybe, you know, those guys step up in Game 6 and Game 7, and I'm proven completely wrong.
You look at the 2008 championship team, and that was a better team in a sense that you had Garnett, Pierce, and Allen, and those guys might have been. That was a wagon, and those 3 may have been a little bit past their prime, but they also had Kendrick Perkins, who did his job to the highest level, you know, playing defense, rim protecting, setting picks, being kind of like the offensive lineman of that team. And you had Rondo in his 2nd year emerging, but you also had guys like Eddie House and James Posey coming off the bench. Tony Allen. I mean, Posey and House had already were
loaded team.
Posey and House had already won championships. So, like, these guys had that DNA. The Celtics have none of that. None of the Celtics have ever played in the NBA Finals. I mean, Ime Udoka was an assistant coach with San Antonio. That's about it. And that's as an assistant coach. So you need, you know, again, that's all for the offseason roster reconstruction, those types of things of getting guys that, you know, have been there. And it can help because the situational basketball, that's what they're really poor at this point. You know, it kind of really, we see it at the end of quarters. That's been a problem all year. The end of quarters where, like, geez, they got outscored 8-2 in the final minute and a half. So instead
not closing out well,
without having a 12-point lead, now it's down to 6. You know, that type of thing is just not good.
Yeah, that's something that you talk about in high school basketball, middle school basketball, is you got to close out quarters, right?
Right.
Because it's a momentum thing. And the Celtics did, you alluded to this a minute ago, Sap, the Celtics did have the lead, to take the lead in the 3rd quarter. And then Jordan Poole, it launches a deep three that the Celtics didn't play defense on. And then suddenly Golden State has the lead going into the fourth quarter. So it's like, I think from a emotional standpoint and just looking up the scoreboard standpoint, you're like, we just did all that work. We played so well. We don't even have the lead. So, and then Golden State, I think, started with a 8-0, 11-0 run to start the fourth quarter.
Mhm.
And you're like, well, the Celtics, based on their shooting right now, 8 points seems like 30 points. This game is over. They just starting quarters and finishing quarters so important, and the Celtics have not been consistent in any aspect of doing that. So but the biggest thing, frustrating thing for me, Sap, is that they know this. They know the turnovers are hurting them. They know the free throw shooting is hurting them. They know the finishing quarters is hurting them, and yet they have not been able to improve it. So you kind of throw up your hands and are like, how in the first play of the game in game 5, that's an incredibly important game, after 3 straight days of hearing turnovers are going to really affect this game. You can't turn the ball over. Jason Tatum turns the ball over. The first play of the game, you're like, what the hell, to use a nicer term. It's just like, it's so frustrating, Sap. I mean, first play of the game, they turn the ball over. It's like, are they paying attention at all to what's killing them in this series? So from my Celtics fan perspective, Sap, I'm emotionally fried.
Well, get some rest, hydrate. That's also important.
Yeah.
And make sure your potassium level's high so that you can get through these games. That's what I would tell the fans and the players, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I also think that when you get in these situations, your team follows your best player, and we're all in agreement Jason Tatum's their best player. And if he's playing tight, then I think the rest of the team starts to play tight. He's turning the ball over, and it has a way of trickling down to even the role players. So, he's got to come out in the first quarter in game 6 and be forceful, get to the basket, play with that force, and that should open up things for the rest of the offense. The other thing about their offense, which has just been hit or miss in this series, I mean, I detailed it with the scores, 120 and 116 in the 2 wins, 88, 97, and 94 in the 3 losses. There's like no consistency there. Is make simple passes, right? So if the idea is to go from point A to point C, make sure that you go to point B. There's nothing wrong with that hockey assist. You don't have to make the difficult pass to get the assist. Make the easy pass and let the next player make the pass that leads to the basket. That's really simple stuff, but it's so important. When they're clicking on all cylinders, that's when they're working. Tatum will get it to Brown, who then will make the nice pass to Marcus Smart, or whatever order you want to talk about. And also, I'd like to see a little bit more 2-man game with Tatum and Brown. Go with your 2 best players. Let's have some action with those 2 guys, because they did that earlier in the postseason and it worked. They seem to get away from it. It seems like when they really look for a bucket, it's mostly Tatum and Smart. Why not Tatum and Brown? Go with your 2 best players.
Absolutely. And you'd like to see Brown and Tatum both hot in the same quarter. They both, where the team's like, okay, which one do we defend on this possession? Instead, the Celtics are like, okay, fourth quarter, this is going to be, and then they flip a coin. Okay, Brown, we're going to just run the offense through you in this quarter. Or at the third quarter, okay, Tatum, you. It's like, why not both of them? But I think you made a great point too, Sap, about the hockey assist too, in that I was watching game as I do with my dad. I watch all these games with him. And I was like, why are they making these passes so much harder than they have to be? Even the ones that don't result in turnovers. It's like Marcus Smart from half court will try to throw an entry pass to the baseline with Al Horford or Rob Williams is in double covered. Sometimes, they'll catch you. Like, why are you making this incredibly difficult pass for no reason? If you really wanted to get to Rob Williams, dribble it up, pass it to another guy. He could find Rob Williams. You don't have to force it into him. And like Jason Tatum's throwing cross court passes and they're getting obviously intercepted. It's like, you want to get the ball to point C, like you said, Sap. Like, why do you have to do it in one play? They do have this tendency with the passing, and then when they're down, to try to just hit home runs every single time. You're like, you don't have to do that. You can hit singles. Get on base, to use baseball analogies. Like, you don't have to get it all back or get the ball to the guy that you want to get the guy at this second. It's like they have this weird thing where they panic, and then it just leads to Golden State getting easy baskets virtually every single time. So I think it's a great point.
It looks even worse because of the team you're playing, who's a really good defensive team. Golden State was number 2 in the league in defense this year behind the Celtics. I think the biggest misconception of the Warriors is they're not a good defensive team. They've always been a good defensive team. They're well coached. Draymond Green's an elite defender. Klay Thompson, he's not what he used to be, but he still knows what he's doing out there. And even though Steph is a liability at times, he always seems to be in the right place at the right time. So, loose balls tend to find him. And the rest of those guys will play defense. We see Wiggins is developing into a really good defensive player. But the lack of ball movement on the Celtics end when they have the ball is really pronounced when you go to the other end and see what Golden State does. Because nobody in the league comes even close to moving the ball like Golden State does. Like I said, it almost feels like they are the Brazilian soccer team when they were loaded, when they played the beautiful game and they were winning World Cups. It was just a really pleasing thing to watch. And the Celtics at times feel more like, Italy or Germany, very systematic and more regimented, whereas Golden State just got this beautiful free-flowing offense. And next thing you know, you get wide open shots. The Celtics have to get to that at some point if they have a chance to win this 6th game and then ultimately force that 7th game.
Yeah, and you see at times the Celtics offense can look like that, and they do move the ball beautifully. And then other times it's like just completely isolation. And something else that before we kind of go into our predictions for Game 6 here, Sap, that you talked about the Golden State very good defensively, but they don't have a rim protector. Is that the Celtics don't attack the basket enough? And something that I noticed in the last game when they were making their run in the third quarter. Golden State was in foul trouble. There's 7 minutes left. The Celtics were in the bonus. I think they only took 2 free throw shots the rest of the way. Like you can't do that. If you have 7 minutes of bonus time, you need to be attacking constantly. If you're in the bonus and there's 7 minutes left and you're taking 3-pointers, you're bailing Golden State out every single time. You need to be taking a lot of free throws. That is, and the Celtics could have built a more substantial lead that way. Instead, they went away from being aggressive. And I think that was a crucial moment where Golden State kept it close enough in the third quarter to the point where they seized the lead at the end of it on that Jordan Poole shot. And then the fourth quarter, they just ran away with it immediately. So you said this 10 times, Sep, situational basketball. That's situational basketball right now. To a point, you're in the bonus, you got to attack. You no excuses. You need to get to the free throw line more than 2 times. And so that frustrated me. But Sap, let's just give before we get out of here, let's give our predictions for Game 6. Golden State has a chance to win their 4th title with this core in Boston. Are they going to do it, or is it going to go to a Game 7?
I'm usually wrong, so I'm going to pick Golden State to win in Game 6 and secure the title. I know they've already secured a suite at Encore Boston in Everett, but again, people are going to make a big deal out of that. Like, I can't believe they're, setting up their victory party. Well, you have to do that. You can't just do that on a whim. I'm sure the Celtics have a victory suite somewhere in San Francisco for Sunday night if they're able to win in Game 7. But I don't have a good feeling about this. But since I'm always wrong, plan on the Celtics winning and forcing Game 7, so I'll pick Golden State to win Thursday night at TD Garden and secure their championship.
Yeah, I hate to hear that, but I do like that you said that you're wrong. I've picked at the beginning of the series Golden State in 6, and here we are with Golden State with the ability to win it in 6. So how can I suddenly? It's not like the Celtics have given me good reason to reverse course on that right now. So yeah, I'm gonna say stick with my original prediction, Golden State in 6, which means that they're gonna be celebrating on the Boston Garden floor, and I'm gonna not be able to get that image burned out of my eyes. Unfortunately, the Celtics absolutely can win. It's not like, wow, they're facing this, this Herculean task, like I said at the beginning, where this is just, how are they going to be able to pull this off? We've seen it. They've beaten Golden State twice. They've had Golden State on the ropes and not been able to finish them off in some games. So they have the ability to win, but I mean, they got to take the lessons that they've learned in these losses and apply them. And they have yet to do that in this series. So could this be a major turning point? Absolutely. Winning 2 games in a row is not something that the Celtics team is incapable of doing, even against this Golden State team. But right now, based off of how they're playing, what their body language looked like at the end of last game, the fact that Steph Curry is going to come back with a much better performance after he was not good in Game 5, all those signs point to Golden State. So my original prediction of Golden State in 6 stands. I think the Warriors will be celebrating Boston, and I'll be very, very unhappy, Sap.
And the guy that scares the hell out of me is Klay Thompson, because it seems like he owns game sixes, right? Going all the way back to when they were, facing elimination in 2016 against Oklahoma City, and he had 37. I mean, he's really stepped up the last 3 games to be Klay Thompson. We know what Steph Curry's all about, and then everybody else has kind of fit in. But again, hopefully we're wrong, Jet, and we'll talk on Friday, win or lose, and hopefully we'll be discussing a Celtics victory and previewing Game 7, which doesn't happen very often in the NBA. The last time there was a NBA Finals that went to 7 games was 2016, when Cleveland beat, by the way, Golden State in Game 6 in the Bay Area.
Yeah, Game 7s, I agree with you, or a toss-up. So the Celtics just, if they can stave off elimination here, they'll put themselves in pretty damn good positions. But they cannot play like they have the past 2 games. They will not win that way. They have no chance of winning when you're turning the ball over that much against a team like Golden State. So we will see what happens, Sap. Hopefully I will not be very depressed the next time you hear me. Hopefully I'll be very happy. And but we will talk about it either way. So make sure you check out the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, wherever podcasts are found. Thanks to Full Press Coverage. Check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer, and the YouTube version is at youtube.com/Jet Stryer. And we will talk to you after Game 6, everybody. See ya.